How much is a human life worth? Well, if you were Ford in the 70s, you'd probably say a measly $200K, and this lowball estimate led to Ford knowingly shipping out a rolling death trap. And the result was the Pinto disaster. So stick around as we discover one of the worst cases of corporate greed ever, and how Ford let people burn just to save $11. To understand how such a fiery disaster took off, we first need to talk about the man behind the Pinto, Lee Iacocca. Lee joined Ford as a humble engineer, but it didn't take long for everyone to realize his true talents lay in marketing. In 1956, Iacocca launched one of Ford's most successful campaigns ever, 56 for a 56. Buyers could snag a shiny 1956 model Ford with just a $56 a month payment for 3 years. Can we just pause and appreciate how absurdly good of a deal that is? I mean, I spend more than $56 on my phone bill. Okay, back to it. In the 60s, Iacocca continued his charge up the corporate ladder at Ford and spearheaded the creation of none other than the Ford Mustang. And, as you might guess, it was a hit, selling more than 1 million units in just its first 2 years, catapulting Iacocca to president of the Ford Motor Company in 1970. But Iacocca didn't get long to celebrate. While he was busy playing around with pony cars, the Japanese automakers had come in like a wrecking ball. Toyota and Honda hit the US market with cheap, efficient cars like the Corolla and Civic, and Americans bought them up faster than Ford could say mid-size sedan. Cheap, reliable, fuel efficient. They were everything Detroit wasn't.
Today is happy Honda day. Honda hands you driving. From here to there to everywhere.
Ford needed a response, and they needed it fast. So despite resistance, Iacocca pushed the idea of the Pinto. His pitch, a cheap subcompact that could stop the Japanese invasion and serve as a gateway drug into Ford's more expensive lineup. Start with the Pinto and end up in an F-150. Genius. The Pinto was Iacocca's baby, and he laid down 3 strict rules. The car had to weigh no more than 2,000 pounds, cost no more than $2,000, and had to be finished in 25 months. The 2,000 pound, $2,000 limits were classic Iacocca, probably still riding off the high of his 56 for a 56 campaign. But that 25-month production timeline, well, that would be the root of many of the Pinto's issues. You see, in Detroit, the turnaround time for most cars is 43 months. Iacocca's 25-month deadline was record-breaking. I mean, even nowadays, Tesla takes more than 25 months just to give you a car you already pre-ordered. But here's the problem. There are a few key steps in car development: design, styling, quality assurance, and of course, tooling. Tooling is where you make the machines that stamp out all the car parts and normally takes 18 months on its own. With the regular timeline, this is the last thing you want to do, because you want to know that all the parts work and they work together safely before you commit to the machines making them. But as you can see, in the case of the Pinto, Ford couldn't wait for the car to be designed before tooling. Are you mad? Iacocca wouldn't have allowed it. So when crash tests started showing that the cars were unsafe, it was already too late. Retooling would have delayed the project, and that was a big no-no. In fact, whenever a problem was raised that meant a delay to the Pinto, Iacocca would chomp on his cigar, look out the window and say, "Read the production objectives and get back to work." This would come back to haunt Ford in a big way.
Pinto, the little carefree car at your Ford dealer September 11th.
The Pinto launched on September 11th, 1970. And guess what? It was a hit. Compared to the competition, it had better handling, more space, and faster acceleration. Sure, its blistering 19-second quarter mile wouldn't win many drag races, but for a sub $2,000 car, not bad. In its first year, Ford sold 350,000 Pintos, and with the oil crisis jacking up petrol prices, sales only jumped to over 450,000 units. Everything was going well for the Pinto. But you didn't click on this video to hear about the Pinto's sales success, now did you? On May 28, 1972, Lily Gray was driving her 6-month-old Pinto when it stalled on the highway. A Ford Galaxy behind her slammed the brakes but couldn't stop in time. The Pinto exploded into flames. While Lily managed to escape the car, her injuries were too severe and she passed away just hours later. Her passenger, 13-year-old Richard Grimshaw, suffered third-degree burns to over 90% of his body. And this was just the beginning. The NHTSA linked 27 deaths to the Pinto's fuel tanks, but investigative reports, like those done by Mother Jones, estimate the real death toll to be closer to 500. Either way, it's a tragedy, and what makes it even worse is that it could have all been stopped with an $11 fix. Let that sink in. Looking back, it's not surprising at all that the Pinto had issues. After all, Iacocca's attitude towards safety was lacking, to say the least. As he put it, safety doesn't sell. So what actually caused the Pinto to become a rolling petrol bomb? Well, the problem lay in the placement of the fuel tank behind the rear axle. Paired with a particularly crumply rear crumple zone, this meant that in a rear end collision, the fuel tank would be pressed right up against the differential housing, and 4 large bolts on the housing would puncture the tank, spilling fuel all over the place. Ford knew about this issue. Their own internal crash tests showed that in rear-end impacts at speeds as low as 25 miles an hour would rupture the fuel tanks. But remember how the tooling had already been done? Well, that meant that Ford was already locked into this design, and it would cost millions to change it. And frankly, no one at Ford was even willing to tell Iacocca, because it was just a sure shot way to get fired. Also, there's one little thing I forgot to mention. In those internal crash tests, somehow 3 of the 11 cars actually survived without the fuel tanks rupturing. But how did they survive? Well, each of them had modifications to fix the fuel tank issue, ranging from a $5 plastic shield to an $11 saddle-style fuel tank. But Ford decided it was cheaper to just do nothing. Now, this is the part where it actually gets pretty sinister. Now we're going to talk about the infamous Pinto memo, a cost-benefit analysis that Ford probably wished had stayed buried. It's a little bit contentious as to why the memo was created, but what's not up to debate is the disturbing math it laid out. Ford allegedly calculated that it would cost $11 per car to fix the vulnerable fuel tank. Across an estimated production run of 11 million cars based on the Pinto platform, this would come to about $121 million in total. But to pay off the victims, just $49.5 million. The cold hard math valued human life at just $200K and meant that fixing the tanks simply wasn't worth it. Now look, Ford didn't pull that $200K number out of nowhere. It actually came from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. But still, using it to justify not fixing a known defect, that's next level corporate greed. For perspective, today FEMA values a human life at $7.5 million. If Ford had used figures even close to that, their cost-benefit analysis would have fallen apart. Look, I'm no saint, but even I understand that what Ford was doing was wrong. And anyway, shouldn't it have been illegal to knowingly sell a bomb on 4 wheels? Well, the thing is, in the late 60s, Ford was heavily lobbying against regulation of the auto industry, and it shouldn't surprise you that the place they put their foot down the hardest was Standard 301, which would have required cars to withstand a 20-mile-per-hour impact without leaking fuel. Ford knew that the Pinto wouldn't pass this regulation, so pulled every trick out of the book and managed to push the rule's implementation back by nearly a decade, from 1968 to 1976. During this time, over 3 million Pintos rolled off the assembly line, many of them ticking time bombs. Even though Ford managed to trick regulators, by 1975 sales of the Pinto halved as its fiery reputation caught up with it. And with mounting pressures in both the courtroom and from the American public, Ford recalled 1.5 million Pintos, retrofitting them with the plastic shields they really should have come with in the first place. In the end, Ford produced around 3 million Pintos, meaning that fixing the fuel tanks would have only cost $33 million, far less than the estimated $100 million that Ford ended up paying in lawsuits and settlements. This is truly one of the saddest cases in the car industry, with corporate greed triumphing over reason. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you found this video interesting, smash that subscribe button for more untold car stories. And let me know in the comments below, what other car stories should I cover next?